Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. Joined today with Durst. We're the warm-up act. There's a big podcast coming at 8:30 that you don't want to miss. But we are going to get you warmed up on the draft class here, talking about players on top 25 teams where there weren't enough players on the teams for us to do a preview. So that's like Ole Miss, Tennessee, SMU, Iowa State, Kansas State. Those teams are top 25 teams, but we didn't necessarily do a team preview on them. But Durst, before we dive into that, how are you doing on this fine Wednesday evening?
I am doing fine. I will give a shout out to, I think it was last night's show, the Iowa State, Kansas State preview. I didn't make it through the whole episode because things like work got in the way, but it was, it was a good episode. I planned on finishing up. So if anybody wants to get a little more information on this weekend's Kansas State, Iowa State game, we're going to talk about the teams a little bit today, but great episode last night with Randall and who was the other guy on that one?
Chris.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was Chris's like second or third podcast with us. That's why I had to sit here and pause on the name.
Try to put you on the spot there.
I've worked with him before. Who was that again? But I think everybody's name, like at this point, the draft professor lineup, we are almost in midseason form. We're down, I think, 3 podcasters who are going to be joining us in October. But generally speaking, the people that you see now are going to be the people that you continually see all the way up through April. So, Durst, like I said, we had, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Kansas State, Iowa State, and SMU. And do you have anything on P.J. Williams, the offensive tackle from SMU?
Yeah, so I did watch a little bit of him. I really want to get to like the Clemson tape and, just because the Clemson's got such good edge rushers and everything. I didn't make it to that tape yet, but I watched a couple of games of P.J. Williams. He played one of the games he played left tackle, and then 2 of them he played right tackle on the games that I watched. But I think he's expected to play the right tackle position, in 2025. So he's a big guy, got the prototypical size and frame, and I do think he's got some athleticism. My concern with him, or why I don't necessarily, I'm not so sure he's going to be a top 100 guy for me, because I just saw so many times that he seemed to be jolted when defensive linemen hit him in the chest. He just went backwards sometimes. So I feel like his play strength isn't what I would hope for, but I do think he's got some ability to get out of his stance and some lateral agility and some speed and quickness. I'm positive he's going to be drafted, but I'm just not so sure how high at this point.
Got it. And then there were a few other players on the SMU list. Is there anybody else that you have from SMU that would be, you're looking at like they're going to do round 5 or better right now?
Well, I'll tell you what, I was already pretty high on one of the tight ends. And then last night I discovered the other one, and so so Maryland is Russell Maryland's son, RJ Maryland, that's his name, and he is more of a Harold Fannin kind of style, sort of maybe kind of a halfway of a slot, maybe a little bit of an H-back, definitely a very small guy. And so I like Russell Maryland, but he ended up getting injured last night, season-ending injury. So for RJ Maryland, I basically had a stellar start to the season. He had 162 yards on 9 catches in the 2024 opener. So he was like well on his way to putting up these like Harold Fannin numbers. Downfield threat, tracks the ball well, really good hands and body control, got some yak ability. But he had the injury and he is small. So he's going to be too small for a lot of people. So I thought that the other tight end, Matthew Hibner, was just a guy. He was like the next guy up. The guy in front of him got hurt. I think Matthew Hibner might be the best blocking tight end I've studied so far, and I've studied about 20 of them. So he's a much bigger guy than RJ Maryland. And from what I can tell, I think they plan on playing them both at the same time. A little bit of 12, personnel formation. A lot of RJ Maryland either coming out of the backfield or playing in the slot. So I think Matthew Hibner is going to get a lot of playing time, and you see him blocking defensive ends. You see him, blocking in a true like Y inline formation. He's still got the soft hands. He's got one catch. I think he went like 75 yards right down the middle of the seam. So he's got some athleticism, but I think his bread and butter is he's going to be a blocking tight end, probably a number 2 tight end, maybe starting off as a number 3 tight end for an NFL team.
Awesome. And anybody else on SMU, or do we want to start pivoting and cover some of the guys at the other schools?
Yeah, I'll give a quick shout out to Cameron Robertson. He was a rotational defensive end last year, and I have him as an undrafted free agent at this point in time. But of course, I mean, let's not pretend we don't have anywhere from 12 to 15 games left to go. So I hate to stamp too many people as a return to school or undrafted free agent when we just don't really know what they're going to put on film this year. So Cameron Robinson's a defensive end I want to keep my eye on. What I saw so far, I'm not super high on him, but I think he's worth a shout out and definitely somebody I want to monitor. But let's hit one of the other teams. What you got?
Sure. So let's go to Ole Miss. Now, one of the things that stands out about Ole Miss to me is when you're looking at people's wide receiver boards, I'm starting to see Deshaun Stribling move up. I think he was 11th on Dane Brugler's list. And then they have another wide receiver, and is it Lee? Yeah, Cayden Lee, who on other people's boards, Cayden Lee is starting to get really close to the top. He's not top 10, but he is top 15. So he's like right in that tier. So if you had to pick like Stribling, Lee, is there a receiver that you think is a better prospect at Ole Miss?
Yeah, I like Stribling. Now, the thing about Cayden Lee is he's the incumbent. He's the guy that was already there on the team, and so I think if you're talking like Ole Miss people, they're probably going to be like, oh yeah, he's our guy. And I mean, he entered 2025 with 14 starts, 12 in 2024. He's a space creator before and after the catch, can be used on screens but also downfield. And Cayden Lee has 0 drops in his career. Now, that's some positives. The negatives is he's listed at 5'11", 175. He might be smaller than that. He's probably a slot only, although at Ole Miss, they do play him as a lot at flanker. They do move him around a little bit. But for the NFL, probably a slot only. I think he's probably quicker than fast, the old cliche. I don't think he's necessarily going to have great downfield time speed, but he's quick. He's got smaller catch radius, obviously, by being a smaller guy. And when I say that, he is 1 on 10 on contested catches throughout his career. Only secured 1 of the 10 catches or targets was considered to be a contested catch. He gets ragdolled after the catch on a few of them. Like he actually will sometimes really protect the ball like a running back. He'll get like 2 hands on it and do that, because I think he must have had some fumbles early in his career or something like that, because he seems to have that pretty ingrained on him. So I don't really like this play strength. I think he's a slot only, but he is quick. So Cayden Lee, him and Harrison Wallace are pretty much tied for me as being like equal. Harrison Wallace is the Penn State transfer, 2021 to 2024. He's got 84 catches, 1,221 yards in his career at Penn State. He did play 4 years there, but again, he doesn't have like great stats. He at Penn State's offense was not very prolific when it comes to passing the ball, or at least not to the wide receivers. A lot of times when we talk about Drew Aller, a lot of people are like, yeah, but look at their wide receivers. But Harrison Wallace, I mean, he's got a chance to be drafted as well. And now he's going into an offense that's a little bit more conducive to, I think, his skill set. So it's a little bit more wide open. So, good size and frame, physicality and play strength's a lot better than Cayden Lee. And he also brings a little bit of yak ability. Now the guy I like the most is Deshaun Stribling. So he's a two-time transfer. Washington State from 2021 to 2022, Oklahoma State 2023 to 2024, and he redshirted after 4 games in 2023 because he had a broken hand. So that's why he's a fifth-year senior. So the thing that concerns me the most is why he didn't declare early. Now he could have declared after his second year, and after his third year, that's when he got injured. So I can see why. But after his second year, which was this last season at Oklahoma State was a good year for him. So I'm not too sure why he didn't declare. If it was just, NIL money, or the advisory committee just gave him a day 3 grade and he thought he might be able to do a little bit better than that. But he actually led all Pac-12 freshman receivers in catches, receiving yards, and touchdowns back in 2021. So he had a really good start to his year at Washington State. And then he led all Washington State receivers in catches, receiving yards, and touchdowns in 2022. I'm not too sure why he transferred after that, because then all of a sudden you got Cam Ward there, and I'm not too sure why. It seems like almost a not just a lateral move, but maybe a move backward to go to Oklahoma State when you had Cam Ward there at Washington State. But he's a prototypical build for an X receiver, about 6'2", 210. Shows toughness, physicality, and body control and snatching the ball with bodies all around him. So he has a lot of contested catches on his film. So that might be the one thing that people are concerned about, is he doesn't gain a lot of separation. I'm not so sure he's got great play speed either. But why didn't he declare after so many good years? So really he's a guy that can catch it on the sideline and get both feet in bounds. He can catch it with bodies all around him. So he's the guy I'm most excited about to kind of take over the Tre Harris role over at Ole Miss. Now the thing about Ole Miss, I listened to Ole Miss podcast, and the 3 things I kind of took away from that is that they are going to be a little bit more pro style offense this year. I think it's Austin Simpson, something like that. But the quarterback is a little bit more of a pro style quarterback than oh gosh. Dart, yeah, Jackson Dart. So they're not going to be running as much quarterback as they did. They're going to be a little bit more pro style. And then they didn't only bring in the 2 transfers I mentioned. They brought in 3 more transfers at wide receiver. They brought in a total of 5 receivers. 3 of them, they basically saying, hey, we're going to, you guys are going to be like next year. You guys are going to be the 2026 starters after everybody leaves. But so they got a whole lot of receivers. And the second thing I came away with is because of that, they're supposedly going to do a little bit more rotation than they had in the past. So because of that, I may cap some of the stats of the 3 guys we already talked about. They also have a freshman receiver who's a 5-star guy. So they got a lot. Like, they actually think this might be the deepest wide receiver crew they've ever had at Ole Miss. Meanwhile, their offensive line looks weak. So we're going to kind of see how that all turns out. A new starting quarterback, a whole bunch of wide receivers, and kind of a weak offensive line.
Okay, and then staying at Ole Miss, they have a few other players that are high on the board. So one is linebacker Suntarine Perkins.
Yeah, an exciting guy. See, he was the nation's #1 ranked high school linebacker, and as a true freshman, he was a freshman All-American back in 2023. So I consider him sort of one of the wild cards of this draft because he's got very good athleticism, but he's severely undersized. So he's listed at 220 now, but I think Ole Miss is one of these teams that lie a little bit about their measurements. Because like a year ago, he was listed at like 6'1", 210 or so. Yeah, you can put on 10 pounds in these programs, but I'm curious to see what his actual size is. So he's a little bit like Harold Perkins from LSU. Like, he's an exciting guy, but is he a tweener? Is he a guy without an NFL position? Because he was used a lot as a pass rusher last year. So as a pure, off-ball linebacker, I think his skills are probably good. As an edge rusher, kind of like the Jalon Walker for Georgia last year, he turned that role into a first-round pick last year. So to me, he's a guy that could be a first-round pick. He could be a day 3 pick. It's really kind of hard to say. So I actually believe he led the SEC in sacks last year. I have it as he had 11 sacks last year, but I think that actually led the SEC. So safety size linebacker who needs to be a lot better in coverage if he's going to play a true off the ball linebacker spot.
So between Suntarine Perkins and Harold Perkins, right, we're probably going to have a similar conversation on both players this draft cycle. Really good players. They don't have the right size for the equivalent NFL position, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think with with Harold Perkins, since they're both Perkins, and by the way, not related to each other, but with Harold Perkins, you've seen him do some other things. They tried him as off the ball linebacker. They tried him as sort of a slot defender. I have a clip of him going man on man versus Luther Burden in the slot. So, I mean, he's got some coverage ability, but he's probably a liability in NFL if you're just asking him to be like a big nickel safety type of guy. I think with Sundarine, you're not too sure. I think Harold Perkins might have already shown you all he's got. Suntarine, I think there's still some upside that maybe we have not seen yet. And he seems to be more of an upward trajectory, where Harold Perkins, it seems like we're still waiting for him to replicate his freshman season. So I'm a little bit higher on Suntarine in my own personal rankings. But, I actually, it's a total, like, a similar conversation with both of these guys.
Got it. And do you think Suntarine Perkins, his NFL position, do you think it's going to be linebacker, or do you think he'll have to move to nickel?
I'd like to see more of a true like stack and shed and some better instincts and things like that. Right now, he's more of a slips the blocks versus takes on the blocks kind of guy. But we've seen a lot of guys like that. I think we're in the NFL now where, like, if you got one guy that can take on the blocks and one guy that's just the athlete that's running around, you can probably get away with running a scheme that way. I mean, his skill set, we really just haven't seen anything from Suntarine in terms of like coverage or the ability to do that. But I don't think he's a pure edge at 6'1" or 6'2" and 220 either. So I'm thinking his best path to the draft and for the NFL is to be a Jalen Walker kind of guy.
Okay. And then Ole Miss defensive lineman Xavier Harris.
He's one of the guys I didn't end up really getting a chance to talk about. Sorry about that.
Okay. No problem. So now I'm looking at the list, seeing if there's anybody else from Ole Miss that we want to mention. If we talk, did you get to Luke Hasz?
About the two tight ends? They got two tight ends, and Luke Hasz is the guy that transferred from Arkansas 2023 to 2024 to Arkansas. He was a true freshman All-American despite a broken clavicle. So, I mean, he really came on at the very beginning of his freshman year, so that even though he didn't finish out the season, he was like first team freshman All-American by almost every publication. He's got good play strength, reliable hands. He's another guy that has 0 drops for his career. That's interesting. I didn't realize that, but Ole Miss has got 2 of those guys. And he's got an 87.5% career catch percentage. So he's like automatic for a lot of these quarterbacks. Really good as an underneath target, but his weakness is durability now because he's injured again. He's injured this preseason, and we're not too sure at what point, but it could be halfway before the season before we see him again. He's very small for an inline tight end, which is basically what he played at Arkansas. He's listed at 6'3", 242, and so he plays the position a little bit more of an inline guy than a flex guy, but I'm not too sure if he has the translatability because of his size. We got to be able to put on some more size. He kind of lacks the burst and the quick twitch to be a quick separator or gain a lot of yak. So again, I really see him as more of a inline Y guy than a flex guy. But then you get into the whole what's his true size. And by the way, he was 75% in line at Arkansas last year. So this is going to open up the opportunity, this injury, for Dac'quan Wright. So he's going to, be the starter at the beginning of the season, and he had 8 starts with Virginia Tech over the 2022-2023 season. Started 6 games at Ole Miss last year, including 2 at wide receiver. I'm going to go back and see the 2. I didn't see the 2 games where he played a wide receiver because right now he's listed at 6'4", 255. But he did catch 27 passes for 394 yards and 4 touchdowns last season. He's going to get an opportunity with Hasz on the bench on the physically unable to perform list for a couple of weeks there. Now, the Ole Miss is not a team that really features the tight end. Already, I would like the name escape me, Pinkerson or something like that from last year. But yeah,
Prescored.
yeah. So he was like featured in like one game in the bowl game against Penn State a couple of years ago. But Ole Miss does not really feature the tight end, so it's going to be interesting to see like if both these guys, if they're healthy, just how much action, how much play they're really going to get. Now one guy that may be just a little bit interesting simply because of his last name is Princewill Umanmielen. Sorry about that.
Umanmielen.
Yeah, so of course his brother Prince Lee was the starter last year that transferred from Florida. Now it's Prince Will is transferred in this year from Nebraska. Now this is a guy that has very little film. He got very little play over at Nebraska. So I think right now we're just excited about him because of his last name, but it does sound like he's being penciled in as the starting edge. And I was really a big fan of Prince Lee, even though I can't pronounce his last name very well. That's probably all we really should talk about in terms of the Ole Miss, unless you have any more questions about that. But
No, I love it. We're dropping names. What we're trying to do is make sure that all of the players on top 25 teams that are draft eligible are getting their 30 seconds of time, on a preseason draft podcast. So that being said, let's stay in the SEC and flip to Tennessee. And, right at the top of the board for Tennessee is Jermod McCoy. Is he your corner one right now?
he is now, of course, the big caveat is the fact that he tore his ACL in January. But rumor has it he's out on the field doing some practice and stuff. So it'd be interesting to see if he plays an entire season, if he plays half a season. Does he potentially shut it down if Tennessee has a bad season and just say, hey, I've got a good enough tape? I think I've heard some Twitter people say that he's got good enough tape that he could probably just take off this season. And but he is my number one. Now Tennessee is one of the ones I did my top 10 big board for. So I'll give you a little bit also information that they had 4 players drafted in the 2025 draft, and their 5-year average is 3.5. But they did have 10 players drafted as recent as 2002. So I mean, I guess that's not recent, but that's their recent history of this millennium. So back to McCoy for a little bit. He's another guy that shrunk a little bit. I've seen some stats there, like some measurements where he was supposed to be like 6'2", and Tennessee now has him listed as 6 foot. So I think we're probably getting closer to the truth once we get to the 6 foot range. And he is a junior, so he theoretically could come back if he really isn't healthy enough to even like work out or isn't healthy enough to play. I don't think that's the case at all. He tore his ACL in January, and everything's pointing to the fact he's going to have at least be able to play a little bit this season. Now he was an Oregon State transfer in 2023, but he's got very good length and size, speed, change in direction and fluidity. He stays square and disciplined. He's got the patience just to face up against the receivers as they're coming up to him. Ball skills, and he's very physical both at the line of scrimmage and at the catch point. So like most corners, I mean, there's you can point to a rep here and a rep there. Ryan Williams, as an example, but his tape is like 95% good. I do question his deep speed, or at least I had that question even before the ACL injury, and so who knows? We may not even get a 40 time on this guy, but he is my corner number one.
Okay, and then we don't have to go too much further down the board to see edge Joshua Josephs from Tennessee. What do you have on him?
Yeah, so he's 6'3", 245. So he's really got the good size to be a true edge, not a 4-3 defensive end, but an edge. And he's had to wait his turn. He's a senior now, but he's had to wait his turn because he was behind James Pierce for the last couple of years. Now, not only was he behind James Pierce last year, but last year they brought in a 5-star freshman who is also an edge, who some are saying actually may be better than Pierce. So it's going to be interesting to see how they divvy up his snaps this year. But Jordan Ross is going to be a sophomore this year, and it was as a sophomore that James Pierce had his huge breakout season. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens was with Joshua Joseph. Have we paved the way for him with Pierce leaving, or is he just going to be kind of like the caretaker, caretaker until Jordan Ross is ready to be a star in this league? But anyway, had very good athleticism and pass rushing traits, but is um, it's difficult to kind of project him going forward because of, he's sort of got very little production, and his snaps were not like huge. He had two sacks last year, 3 hits. So I'm excited to see what he's got. I've heard from some Tennessee people who are not as optimistic, but I do have him as like a fringe top 100 guy. I can absolutely see him climbing the ranks if he ends up filling in for James Pierce, or he might end up being like the backup to the 5-star though.
So do you see Joseph's athletic ability the same way that we would talk about James Pierce Jr.'s athletic ability?
I'd say that Pierce is a little bit more of a unicorn. Like Pierce almost looked like he was like Julio Jones or something like that. He was taller, he was longer, he was leaner, and he would almost like go at somebody and just cross their face so quickly that it almost looked like, okay, if Julio Jones was an edge rusher, what would he look like and stuff. So I don't think he's got that kind of ability, but I think he might be more of a traditional edge. So James Pierce had a very unique kind of a style to him, and so some teams may not really like a guy that's sort of that long, that lean, and maybe that finesse. I think Joseph's got a little bit more of a, this is what most teams are kind of looking for in a 3-4 type of edge rusher.
Okay, so who else from Tennessee was worthy of being on your top 10 graphic?
So those are the only 2 that I actually have as my top 10. Now, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. I was thinking you were meaning like top 100. So these are the only guys I had in my top 100, but I got a bunch of guys in my top 10. Let's talk a little bit about another guy, Arian Carter. So he's a guy that made it on the freaks list just about 3 or 4 weeks ago. He is an off the ball linebacker, and he's 6'1", 235. Former 4-star. He was the number 10th linebacker in his high school class, and so he started all 13 games at weak side linebacker last year, leading the team in tackles. He's a former 300 meters hurdler in high school, and also has a vertical jump of 40 inches, 40.3 inches. He's hit 21.2 miles per hour on the GPS and bench press 325 pounds. Again, this is all according to Bruce Feldman from the Athletics Freaks list, an annual list of the freakiest athletic specimens in all of college football. So again, he's not just an athletic warrior either. He led the team in tackles last year. He had 6.5 tackles for loss, 26 run stops. He's a good linebacker with a lot of good athleticism. So he's a guy that could really end up climbing the charts a little bit. Now, Chris Brazzell is sort of the lone holdover wide receiver for Tennessee. He was a Tulane transfer in 2022 to 2023. He played in Tulane. He was a freshman All-American in 2023 because he got 44 catches and 711 yards there. A lot of people had him as a high guy last year, but he ended up, maybe he just needed a year to acclimate from going from, Tulane competition to SEC competition. So he's a long-limbed boundary receiver who's got some ability to get deep. He's 6'5", 200 pounds. He's a 4th-year junior, so he's actually could come back even next year. But I don't think he's extremely fast. He's more of a build-up speed, more of a long strider who isn't very sudden at the top of his routes. His release package is just sort of so-so, which I think kind of held him back. Because, the SEC plays a lot of press man. Not every conference does that, but they play a lot of press man on the outside. His yak is really what worries me. He's got one career force missed tackle one forced missed tackle in his entire career. He also had 6 drops in 2024. So some of the stats aren't looking very favorably for him. He had a 57.4 PFF grade last year. So Brazzell is a guy I'm excited about because Tennessee throws the ball a lot and they have a prolific offense, and he looks like he's going to be the guy that maybe gets a lot of those targets this year. So another guy that I'm excited about, who Lance Hurd is going to be the starting left tackle, and his PFF grade was 44.9 last year. So that's not a very good starting off point. But he was the consensus. He's a consensus 5-star player and the 3rd-ranked high school offensive tackle on the class. He played his freshman year at LSU, but got very little playing time, just 1 start. But then started 11 games for Tennessee at left tackle this past season. So he really has got the size, the frame, the length, and everything you're looking for physically in an NFL left tackle. He just needs time and development. To me, he just wasn't really a great player as a basically a first-time starter last year. And it's hard being a first-time starter at left tackle in the SEC. You face so many guys. So he just took a beating last year. And he probably is going to be a 2027 prospect. I imagine that he probably still needs that much development. But if he has a good year, he's got the traits that people are looking for in NFL. Miles Kesselman is the tight end for Tennessee. He's a 2-time transfer, Hutchinson Community College in 2021, then Alabama in 2022, 2023. So again, this is not just a small college guy. This is a guy that played in Bama for a little bit. He started all 13 games for Tennessee in 2022. And to me, he's a complete tight end with tight end size. I think I probably have him like 18th in my tight end rankings. But if I separate it into Y and inline tight ends and flex guys, he would make it. He would definitely make my top probably 5 inline guys. So he. I lost my place there. Sorry. So complete tight end with inline size, an excellent run blocker who's also involved in a lot of pulls, traps, and counters. He's another guy who has not dropped a pass in his entire college career. So I wouldn't say he's a prolific receiver, but he's got the soft, steady hands that you're looking for. So, Miles Kesselman, 6'5", 256, a 5th-year senior. Is there anybody else you wanted to talk about? I do have a couple of names if you want me to just keep going, or do you got anybody in particular you want me to talk about?
Well, I don't. You're the expert. From my standpoint, just making sure anybody that if you think of somebody that's maybe hasn't built their full board. So like here'd be an example, like Clint Gose, who's, he's done a lot of draft stuff with us. He's
Alabama
pretty late to building his board. Who else from Tennessee should Clint be looking at? Like, you there, Durst? Well, while we are waiting for Durst to come back and finish out Tennessee, let's talk about a couple of players from a few other schools that are in the top 25. So at the top of the board, we had Jermod McCoy. We had PJ Williams from SMU, Suntarine Perkins.
Okay, I'm back. So it kind of froze there. So we all right?
Yeah, we are back. So I filibustered as best I could. So anyway, what I was saying is that there are some draft professors like Clint Gose who don't have Clint's board. He's told me it's not where he wants it to be. Who else should Clint focus on when he's watching Tennessee?
Well, so
like a
I'm
top
a little bit excited.
150, top 200-ish.
Yeah, so one guy I think we should at least keep an eye on is Deshaun Bishop. He's going to be the next up when it comes to the running back. Now, they may end up being a little bit more committee this year, but Tennessee's running the last two running backs have been drafted, and the Tennessee, the starting running back for the Volunteers tends to put up a lot of yards. Now, there's some question about the translatability of that offense. And they face a lot of like light boxes because they spread the field so much. So a lot of times there's only 6 defenders in the box. But the starting running back in the Vols offense, I think somebody we should keep a track of. Now Deshaun Bishop is 5'10", 208, and he's only a redshirt sophomore. So at least let's put him on our watch list for the 2027 draft. On limited carries, he showed a lot of promise. He showed he can absolutely play on this level despite being a walk-on. This is a guy that's a native to the Knoxville area, local kid who ended up walking on for Tennessee, who looks like he's going to get his chance this year. A little bit of a thinner build, somewhat of an upright running style, and I think I'm probably going to need to really prove it. After all, this is a walk-on guy that's only got limited carries, so I definitely want to see him like prove that he's got that speed and athleticism, and he's only got one career catch. So definitely, but Deshaun Bishop's a guy I want to keep an eye on. Another guy I like is Bryson Eason. So much was made about the hockey kind of like rotations that Tennessee did on the defensive line last year. They were seemingly like nobody was getting a whole lot of snaps, so they were constantly rotating their defensive line to keep people fresh. The one real holdover in terms of the defensive tackle rotation was Bryson Eason. He's a 6'4", 325-pound fifth-year senior, and he's played in 48 career games, including 21 starts. That does include 14 in 2024. So good size and frame, pretty good get off and motor. I don't think he's going to be a top 100 guy. This is a guy that lacks explosive, traits. He more of a pocket pusher who, inconsistent with getting off blocks. Not really a guy that gets a lot of backfield penetration or disruption, but a guy that he absolutely has a chance to get drafted coming out of that Tennessee program. Wendell Moe is a guard that I'm not as excited about. He's Moe. He's an Arizona transfer from 2022 to 2024. He played in 29 games and 27 starts in Arizona, all at left guard. Excellent at the point of attack and enough quickness. I question his athleticism, explosiveness, agility, movement skills. I think they're all like slightly below average. So I think Tennessee's kind of excited to have him. I'm sure he's going to be a great college player, but I'm not really excited about Wendell Moe Jr., the guard. But that's all I got for you for the Tennessee program.
Okay.
Where do you want to go next?
Well, okay, so we've done Tennessee, we've done Ole Miss, we even hit on SMU. We have Domonique Orange.
All right, so now we're getting into our now we're getting into the guy that could be a first round guy. So Iowa State versus Kansas State. Again, great program last night, or great podcast last night. I definitely want to try to finish it up. And if the rest of you want to hear some more about Iowa State and Kansas State, last night episode was awesome. But Domonique Orange is the headliner of both of these teams. So 6'1", 328 pounds. He's got this, the size, the strength, plays all up and down the line, but projects best as a nose tackle. He brings athleticism to the nose tackle position that not every NFL team even has. He moves very well for a guy that big. He's another one that made the freaks list at 450-pound bench, squatted 650 pounds, and cleans 365. And maybe most impressively, he's got a 34-inch vertical. Really impressive for a guy that's pushing 330 almost. I do kind of question some conditioning, though. There are many times that he feels like he could probably stand to be a little bit better conditioning, and he does redirection once he penetrates the line of scrimmage. I think he has a lot of trouble. So a lot of times he's beating his guy, he's getting into the backfield, he's disrupting things, but he's not finishing the play because, again, at 328 pounds, sometimes it's hard for him to make a lateral shift or anything like that. So he's a guy that's more of a day two guy for me right now because of those limitations, but I can absolutely see him as being a day one, maybe along the, maybe a skill set that's a little bit similar to Derek Harmon, although I think Derek Harmon was a couple inches taller, maybe a little bit bigger, but that's kind of where I see the guy.
Okay, and then anybody else from Iowa State that is like pushing your like top 4 rounds on your board?
Yeah, just real quick because I happen to have this down, but the Cyclones had 4 players drafted in 2025 with a 5-year average of 2.6. But Jontez Williams is a guy that I think a lot of people are excited about. He had some amazing stats in PFF. His receptions per target is only 37.2%. His NFL passer rating given up is 19.6. He had 4 interceptions and 5 pass breakups last season. He's got a little bit of a thicker, more densely built frame. To me, he's a little bit more of a mirror match soft press or zone corner. I think he might project best in the nickel because he's listed at 5'11", 200 pounds. These are the guys that sometimes they don't survive very well on the boundary. Now, I'm not one that says every small guy can play in the nickel because clearly not everybody can. Sometimes they have to be able to really show the toughness in terms of fitting the run and everything. But I think he's shown that already. He had multiple game-stealing interceptions in 2022. We're talking like late fourth quarter, where his interception, like basically was game over now, drop the mic. So he quickly reads, and he sprints from the sideline to get on the action of running plays. One of the reasons I think he might be a good nickel is how he plays the run. And so a lot of times he's on the boundary pretty close to the sideline. And as soon as he sees that this is going to be a run, he is making a dead on sprint all the way down the sideline, or not side, basically trying to make it from the line all the way to the action in the middle of the field. So I really do like his game. Now, I'm not so sure his athleticism's like going to be elite for that position at least. And he's a little bit shorter than you want from a boundary corner. So I have this sort of a fringe top 100. I think a lot of people see him as a clear day 2 guy. To me, he's more of a fringe top 100 guy.
Okay, and that was cornerback
Jontez
Williams from Iowa State. So you have 2 players from Iowa State that are pushing your top 100. Orange relatively high, Williams a little bit further down the board.
Now, while we're on the cornerback, I know the guys on last night's episode was pretty high on Jeremiah Cooper. So to me, he's really more of a nickel corner who plays a lot of safety. So I don't really see him as more. I didn't see very few like outside reps. He's 6 foot tall, 190-pound, senior. And he was actually named the 2022 Big 12 Defensive Freshman of the Year. So this guy, there's some reason where people are high on him. I think he might be more fringe draftable, though. So he can play just about anywhere in the secondary. Primary play as a slot defender. He's got pretty good processing recognition. He does have 7 career interceptions, but I just don't think his hip fluidity was very good. I didn't think his transitions were very good. I think it was the Kansas State game where I saw him get turned around and beat deep on multiple times, and that's who they're playing this Saturday. And I don't think I saw really good recovery speed. So the times he did get beat, he was beat. There wasn't really, he wasn't getting back in the play. He's also got a 24.4% missed tackle rate, and that's not just a stat that shows up on film. He's not a wrap-up tackler. There are many times where he just kind of comes in with a shoulder. He's not even trying to wrap people up. So I don't really love him at nickel because he's not a good wrap-up tackler. I don't really love him on the outside. I don't think he's got good recovery speed. So I think some people are seeing him as a fringe top 100 guy. I see him as kind of a fringe draftable guy. The rest of the guys I like on this team are all offensive. And so why don't we talk a little bit about the 2 running backs? So coming into the season, I loved Abu Sama. So he had an amazing game. One of my favorite games that I've watched in the last couple of years was when he played Kansas State. He got 16 carries for 273 yards and 3 touchdowns in 2023. And this was like the blizzard game, like the game that that whenever it happens in the NFL, it's like once a year or something like that. So he was a true freshman All-American who ran the ball 77 times for 611 yards, 6 touchdowns. But he ended up being the kind of, I wouldn't say backup, but he was sort of the second running back on the team last year. Just a little bit more about SMU. He was a high school state long jump champion. He had a personal best of 10.96 in 100 meters. And to me, he can catch outside of his frame, and he's a threat to score anywhere with the ball in his hands. But he's 5'11", 210-pound junior, could certainly come back. And the guy that really got more play or more carries last year was Chris Hansen. He's 6'2", 220, so a little bit of a bigger guy, larger size and frame, including his height. But I think he's got above average in like just about every category. Above average vision, speed, burst, acceleration, change of direction, contact balance. To me, he's a really good goal line back. He had 15 touchdowns in 2025, 13 rushing and 2 receiving. So I think he could be used on the goal line with that size and frame. He does not have very good ball security. He had 3 fumbles per ESPN. There's a few times where he just didn't seem like he was like really tucking the ball away. I don't think he's got really good route running ability, and to me, he's got kind of thinner legs for a guy that's 220 pounds. I realize some of that's just coming from his height, but to me, he doesn't have like the bubble butt that you often see and prefer in some running backs. So a little bigger guy with some smaller legs. Some of his advanced stats, like missed tackles per attempt and explosive run rate, are not really ideal. They're a little bit of a red flag. But I do have Hansen a little bit above Sama, I think is how you pronounce him, in my newest running back rankings.
Okay, and then Iowa State has a couple of wide receivers. I see Chase Sowell on the list. Do you just have him? He's a guy, or do you have a draftable grade on him?
I have a lot of questions. Chris Sowell is 6'4", 195 pounds, a 4th-year junior. He's a 2-time transfer of Colorado in 2022 and East Carolina in 2023 to 2024. Now, he had back-to-back 600-plus yard seasons for East Carolina. And so I can see why he went in the portal and why some of the bigger name teams wanted to grab him. He's long and lanky. He's got some yak to his game. And he has a 19.8 yards per catch in 2024. That's a high number there. So he's kind of a wild card for me because he could be in position to replace Jaden Higgins, and if so, he could put up some huge stats in this offense. He's got kind of a similar size at being 6'4", 195. The one thing I saw negative for him is he seemed like he fell down a lot. So he's a guy that maybe it's just because he's kind of like tall and maybe a little bit top heavy, but it seemed like he kind of fell down a lot. But I do want to see how it's just a big question mark. I didn't really see enough of him to say, oh, he's going to be a top 100 or, I'm not so sure he's going to be drafted. But I kind of see him play at Iowa State a little bit more.
Okay.
One more Iowa State guy I think I should probably talk about. They really, they do tend to feature their tight ends quite a bit. In fact, listening to some podcasts, I actually heard that they may end up like rotating 4 guys. But to me, the guy that was really the tight end was a Benjamin Brahmer. So he's a guy that, he's the only one of the group of Iowa State tight ends that made my top 20 tight end rankings, 6'7", 250 pounds. He was a true freshman All-American in the 2023 season. But injuries limited him to just 8 games in 2024. He only got 4 starts last year. PFF has a game. PFF has their own little sort of like athleticism score that they cleverly refer to as GAS, which stands for Game Athleticism Score. And he scored in the 99th percentile back in 2023, the way they graded him when he was healthy. He's expected to be more of a power slot in 2025. I think the Mike Gesicki kind of role. So he's a guy that we got to see him healthy, and he's a guy that entering his true junior season, he might be a 2027 guy. So Tyler Miller is a guy that to me is sort of a fringe draftable guy. He's a 6'9", you heard me correctly, 6'9" offensive tackle. So he's a 3-year starter with 37 consecutive games, and he's played both the right tackle and left tackle position. But to me, a lot of this, what makes him good, he's just big and difficult to get around. That also makes him a little bit of a liability. He's got a labored kick step, difficulty redirecting, not a lot of recovery ability if he gets beat, and because of that height, I feel like he often loses leverage. So he's a guy that to me, he's like a fringe draftable guy. Now, we could segue into doing the two quarterbacks. I know we did them a lot during the summertime, but do you want to go Rocco and then we can go into Avery Johnson for Kansas State? Or
Oh,
no?
absolutely.
All
Absolutely. I
right.
mean,
So,
yeah,
hey,
there's quarterbacks on top 25 teams, and we haven't previewed the teams yet. So Rocco
yeah.
Becht and Avery Johnson.
Yeah,
This
yes. I
is
mean, these
this
are
is your
guys
2 minutes.
absolutely. Yeah, definitely guys to keep an eye out for. And I gotta say, I'm not super high on either one of them, but I can see a path for either one of them being very good this year. And there's certainly going to be guys I'm going to be watching this Saturday. So Rocco Beck is a 6'1", 210-pound fourth-year junior. He is the son of I think it's Anthony Becht that
Yes.
was the tight end for the Jets. And
Yep.
so acceptable size and and with above average mobility and toughness, capable of different arm angles and making throws on the move. Generally does a good job at avoiding turnovers. He only has 17 interceptions in 27 games as a starter. He also does a good job avoiding sacks. He's got a 10.2 pressure to sack ratio and only 30 sacks that he's taken in his career. Now, pressure to sack ratio, a lot of people feel that's a better metric than pure sacks taken. Sometimes sacks taken is a little bit of an offensive line stat and a little bit of a quarterback stat. But when it comes to pressure to sack ratio, it's more of like how many sacks did you take of the times you were pressured. So that one seems to be a little bit more of a sticky stat when it comes to projecting quarterbacks and their ability to be, to navigate the pocket and to handle things. Now he's got below average arm strength, in my opinion. And I think we're going to see a huge regression because of the absence of Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. No. So they're missing their two 1,000-yard receivers. Both were coincidentally drafted by the Texans this last year in the second and third round. And again, I'm not convinced that they've replaced him with guys of equal ability. So I'm a little bit lower on him. I have him as more of a round 6, round 7 guy. And of course, if he gets that from the NFL, that kind of feedback, he just return. He's got another season of eligibility. Now, so getting to Avery Johnson, I have him as a return to school guy, but I can see a path where he could end up having a really good season and can climb the rankings a little bit more. So he's 6'3", 196, and it's taken him a while to get to that 196. I think he came in at like 183 as a freshman. So he's a guy that has a very small size and frame. He previously was listed at 6'2", so maybe he grew an inch, maybe he didn't. But he was a 4-star and the number 9 quarterback in that high school class. So strength is speed and athleticism. He's rumored to run a sub 4.5 second 40-yard dash. He is highly elusive. He's got the ability to throw, just basically put zip on the ball with just a flick of his wrist. He does a fantastic job at avoiding sacks, only 11 sacks and a 9.2% pressure to sack ratio in 2024. That's a little bit lower than Rocco. He also does a great job at avoiding turnovers. And to me, turnovers is not just interceptions, it's fumbles. When you throw an interception, it might be 30 yards this way. When you fumble, it might be 10 yards that way. You might be running for your life and fumble the ball really close to your end zone. So he does a good job at avoiding turnovers, only 10 interceptions and 2 fumbles last year. To me, he's got a certain amount of Lamar Jackson aesthetic to his game. I don't want to compare him to the MVP level, Lamar Jackson, but just the way he is almost mannerisms. There's a little bit of like a narrow base that Lamar Jackson and he gets sometimes when he's throwing the ball. Sometimes he's almost like feels like he's like really narrow with his legs and almost up on his tiptoes and things. And then all of a sudden he runs for a little bit and then he gets back in that narrow base and stuff. So to me, his weakness right now, he's a one-read half-field passer who lacks patience in the pocket. Johnson needs to continue to add good weight to his thin frame. And I think he's got just a little bit of an unorthodox, drop delivery mechanics to him. Part of what I was talking about with the Lamar Jackson, aesthetics to him. But of course, obviously, Lamar Jackson has made it work for him at the highest level. So to me, he's a return to school with the potential to blow up this year.
Yeah, and I know on the podcast that we're warming up for, at least one of them is high on Avery Johnson. I was like, when the board, I was putting the graphics together for the show. Avery Johnson, I don't remember if it was, I think it's Travis May, but it might be Randall. One of them is really high on Avery Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, I mean, when I was watching, I mean, like I said, I can see a little bit like, wow, that looks like Lamar Jackson. So I can see why some people are excited. And then I'm reading the comment from Bill there and stuff. So Bill Sparks, shout out, thanks for coming on. And I don't know if he knew about my vacation in Lake Tahoe recently. In fact, I actually have a Lake Tahoe shirt on right now. So I don't know if he if that was just like a little comment he just came up with, or if he knew about that. But
we
I
all
do
knew
agree
you
with
were in
him.
Lake Tahoe. We all knew. You were posting from Twitter from Lake Tahoe.
Yeah,
we knew where you were.
And it was not a center, quarterback exchange either. Yeah, it was.
yeah. Cool. So, anybody else from? I'm looking at the Kansas State list. Oh yeah. So where are you on VJ Payne?
Yeah, I was going to say that to me, the top prospect for Kansas State this year is safety VJ Payne. So he's 6'3", 208-pound, fourth-year junior. He already has 30 starts, including 4 as a true freshman. He's a versatile, interchangeable safety with excellent size and length. I think he's got single range or a single high range to his skill set, and he's said to have hit 23 miles per hour on the GPS. So I did listen to a Kansas State. I sometimes like to listen to. I'll watch a game and I'll listen to a podcast and just kind of hear, okay, maybe there's somebody I don't know about and stuff. And when they were talking about him, they said that he's actually put on some size and weight and added some speed to his game this offseason, because he has a little bit of he at times he looked a little bit thin on film. So his weakness, sometimes when you get people that 6'3", their height and their size can cause some like natural hip tightness during transitions. I think I see that sometimes but this is what you kind of give up. You get a guy that has the range, and I think they've got the linear explosiveness. So if he's got to make it all the way, from the middle of the field to the sideline, I think he can get there. But when it comes to quickness, back and forth, that part scares me a little bit. So I think most people I've talked to think he's an absolute surefire day 2 guy. I have him also as a fringe top 100, sort of a day 3, round 3, round 4, right around that area there. Fringe top 100.
Okay, and I'm sitting here typing a reply to Bill and Steve in the chat.
Yeah, thanks, Steve, for coming on the show for a little bit.
Yeah, so we've had a couple stop by. Steve, Bill. Was that? Oh, and then Daniel was here. I knew that there was a third. And then Daniel stopped by. So
yeah, and I think a couple of those guys were on the defensive back podcast. Was it Tyler and Steve and somebody else who did the I think it was maybe 15 defensive backs you guys did last Thursday, if I remember right.
Too. Yeah.
Yeah, I did watch that episode. Great episode. And that's where I was like, okay, everybody's a little bit higher on VJ Payne than I am, and maybe a little bit higher on Jontez Walker, slightly than I am too.
Well, and I see, obviously I'm working with 24 of you, right? So there's, let's just say VJ Payne is a cult following, but I would not say that cult is a majority of the people. But the people that like him have formed a cult. I think it's the right way to say that, right? So Durst, you want to let everybody know about your draft content and how they can follow you and find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on X, Durst NFL Draft, Durst and NFL, Durst NFL, and then the D on Draft or caps, and then you can find me on the the Mrs. Are Relevant / the Draft Professor at least once a week, if not a little bit more.
Cool. Well, this channel has daily draft content. So we are here every day at 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. Tonight, the 9 p.m. show is going to start at 8:30 because it's going to go long. And most of us like going to bed close to 10 p.m. Eastern. But tonight at 8:30, Bill Sparks, Randall Slifer, Sam Teets, Travis May from A to Z Sports are all going to be discussing the offensive players they have in their top 150. It was a great exercise. So I spent a lot of time last night going through like who's their tight ends, who's their wide receivers, and there's some trends. Carnell Tate, David Boston are top 6 for everybody, right? Those types of things, right? You can see some trends. But then you start looking at other positions and how does one person have 18 tackles in their top 150 and then somebody else only have 14? So it's like is an action, let me rephrase it. Somebody had 23 tackles and somebody only had 14. So that's like almost a 50% difference in the number of players they have graded. And then like another funny thing, Sam Teets had more guards in his top 150 than if you add Travis, Bill, and Randall together. He had 21 guards in his top 150. So
protect that quarterback, huh?
Yeah. So anyway, that podcast is coming up next at 8:30. So I want to give a shout out to those guys. And the best thank you can give if you like this content, go to YouTube and hit that subscribe. The podcast will also be on Spotify. So if you like getting podcasts that way, you can check us out, on your drive into work or, when you're at your kid's practice or whatever it is that you do, on a warm fall night. So we are going to close this down. For Durst, myself, the 88 podcasters at Draft Professor, we will see you on a podcast in about 30 minutes. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.